you see more of the reality that's already there. So if you're looking at a tree, you're seeing the vibration and the frequency of the leaves moving with the wind and how all of that is unified. And then on top of that, sometimes you see sacred geometry, but it's overlaid in such a way that it's not random. It's not like someone just painted random geometry over the space. You're seeing a deeper layer of reality, is how I see it. Hello friends, happy 2025. I hope you're having an amazing start to your year. I have a special treat for you today. My friend Chelsea interviewed me on her podcast a couple months ago. She runs the Liberate Your Bliss podcast. And this was one of my favorite interviews that I've done. In this episode, we dive into the transformative power of connection and community. We also dive into the profound impact of facing trauma, the role of psychedelics when it comes to personal growth, and practical tools for integrating psychedelic experiences into everyday life. I think you'll get a lot out of this episode. Enjoy.
I'm so excited to have you on. So just to kind of give a little intro, James has started an incredible conscious community in Bali where he brings a lot of like-minded people together to talk a lot about spirituality, consciousness, entrepreneurship. Really, there's kind of a large array of topics that come in. But the big thing that I believe that connects all of us is our alignment with God and our search for truth. So I'm really excited to kind of chat deeper with you today and talk more about your mission and your purpose. But just, so how did this community come together, the mastermind community?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on. It's such a pleasure. The community came from meeting so many amazing people here in Bali that I thought, what a shame that they're not all connected to each other. And what if I did a weekly mastermind where we can bring together all the spiritual souls, all the entrepreneurial souls, all the ambitious souls, but underlying it, the truth of the heart, the soul. Bring them all together and see what happens.
Yeah. And how long has this been going on for?
Beginning of December.
Okay. Amazing. So about 5 months.
5 months now.
5 months.
And the amount of transformations and magic that has happened just from the connections, I think you can also speak to this.
I totally can.
Amazing. It's so beautiful to see. And that was my intention from the beginning.
And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And in creating a circle of people that are coming together to connect consciously is such a beautiful gift that you can give, because I think that that's a large void that many of us that are out traveling the world, a lot of the digital nomads and a lot of the entrepreneurs trying to create a different life than what we were shown, we feel alone sometimes on this journey. And the awakening journey can sometimes feel lonely. So to bring together people that you just look and you're like, oh my gosh, like they're just as weird as me, you know? And it feels like home in a place that couldn't be further from home.
Totally. It's about the frequencies for me. I'm like, I know if this person connects with this person, even though their life paths might be different, but they're operating on a beautiful frequency that matches. And when the energy matches, that's when people can go really deep because they get it. You don't have to justify yourself. You don't have to explain why you're into shrooms or why you're into something. They already understand the underlying mechanics of it.
Well, I think that that's the difference between, I say, being sleeping or being awake. It's really interesting when you try to have a conscious conversation with somebody that really hasn't taken that step towards it yet, because you could be speaking the same language, English, German, Italian, but it's not the same frequency, and you can't understand it. So I totally know what you mean about connecting the frequency, because it's a bigger language than language itself.
You know what I also noticed? It's not that the two frequencies don't understand each other, but it also drags your frequency to more of a surface level. When you're in the presence of someone who doesn't want to go deeper, do you notice yourself like contorting a little bit to match their surface expectations of you?
Yes.
And so the opposite happens in a deep circle, where someone's expectation of your presence brings out the presence in you.
Right.
Someone's expectation of your evolution and spiritual path and the depth to which you can go brings out that depth in you.
I agree. And it's almost like the strongest energy and the strongest vibration in the room is what upholds, right? And if you're in a place where there's 15, 20 conscious souls and maybe one that's a little bit behind, it's going to be a lot easier to maintain that frequency than, let's say, we go to Finn's or Atlas nightclub, right? And the consciousness level is a lot lower, and it's uncomfortable energetically in my physical body when the vibration is different than where I'm at. Do you feel it in yours as well?
Absolutely. There's been parties that I went to and I'm like, why am I here? Why am I here? Did I come for some status thing? But actually I'm not getting any fulfillment out of this.
Well, because we're craving connection so badly as souls. The human being is here to connect deeply with other souls, right? Yet when we go to a place that's filled with hundreds of people, if they're not vibrating at the same frequency that we want to vibrate at, you can feel alone in a room of people.
Yeah, I went to a party a little while back, and it was not a huge gathering. It was maybe 30, 40 people. But I felt like none of the energies were coalescing. And it made me appreciate so much what I've created with my circle, where I truly feel like when you come in the circle, even if you don't know anyone, you're going to harmonize with the group quite quickly. Mm-hmm. And I really make sure to spend the first 10, 15 minutes of the circle doing introductions, getting people to share a bit of their story, because that creates that coherence. Mm-hmm. And until that coherence is reached, you can't have a great party. And what I noticed at this other event was there was never a moment in the beginning where the container was opened and that coherence was established. And so that's what I would recommend for anyone running any sort of mastermind, coaching call, group coaching, party. Take a moment to establish the intention and the coherence. Mm-hmm. And it creates such a beautiful dynamic.
It really does. And then it gives each person an opportunity and a choice of whether they want to resonate or not, right? And if they don't,
they leave early.
They leave early. But if they do, it's a really powerful way of getting everybody together and in alignment and in the same way. And I believe that our souls have many, many contracts that we have made with one another to have these conversations to remind us that we're exactly where we're supposed to be. Some call it synchronicity, right place, right time, whatever you want to call it. But I truly believe that there's a reason that all of us have come together and are now spending our weekends in circle talking about God and purpose and life and consciousness. It's pretty beautiful.
We chose it. Mm-hmm. And I think part of the reason that makes Bali so special is every expat that comes here, they chose to be here. They chose to grow on themselves. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you're in your home country, whether it's US or Canada or UK, you're in a group of people that didn't necessarily choose to be consciously living there. They just happen to live there. But when you're in a place like Bali, right? It's like you're here to do the work. And if you're here long term, you're here for the conscious growth.
100%. And I think, Bali has its light and its dark. It's magical in a lot of ways. You can come here and party your face off if you want to. But the conscious community is so, so, so incredibly potent here.
So strong.
And everyone that I talked to had a calling of some sort of coming to Bali. It wasn't just, I came to Bali and I liked it. It was, there's this story that got them to Bali, every person that I meet. What was yours?
I was living in Vancouver.
Okay.
I was tripping on shrooms with some friends, and the same message kept coming up in multiple trips. You have to leave Canada. You've outgrown this place. There's not the growth you're seeking, the spiritual growth you're seeking, you're not going to find it here. And Bali came to my mind, literally from the shrooms. They said, you have to go to Bali. Now, logically, if I was to reason it out logically, I had 2 friends living here. So that was kind of in my brain already. However, when they were living here, I had no desire to come here. And then suddenly, this online desire came online. Boom, you have to go there. Now, Bali's closed off to the world. So I first go to Mexico, spend a few months there, end up doing ayahuasca for the first time, which was a huge piece of the puzzle. Bali opens up its borders. I have my homework for my ayahuasca. I'm ready to go to Bali.
Interesting.
So the timing could not have been more divinely perfect.
Right. We're going to talk more about shrooms later because it's really beautiful how they have gifted you with such insight into your spiritual journey. My calling was very different. I had moved back to my hometown, and I moved back because I was in love with my ex-partner. We were, I wanted things to work with him, but we had been doing long distance for so long, and that really worked for us because we had our freedom. He was able to live his, I call it Groundhog Day life, wake up, work, gym, dinner, bed. And to me, I was living this, like, I was traveling and seeing things and building businesses and all around the world. But there was something about him that called me back to my hometown. And when I went back home, I was 5 minutes from my family. I had him right up the street. I had a great job. I had tons of money. And then we started to have the conversation about children. He didn't want to have children. And I was like, I can't live this life without having children. And I started to think about how unfair that was to a child. If this life is only good if I have a child in it, then how much guilt am I putting on that? How much pressure am I putting on that child to make me happy in this life? Mm-hmm. And I started to think about, well, if this isn't the life I want to live, then what is? And then I found a guy that wanted to have children and wanted to be a stepmom. And he basically said, please stop traveling. If you want to live this life, I don't want you on all over the internet and doing what you were doing. And I was like, okay, you know what? I think that's good. And I got this ear infection I told you about that took the hearing away from my ear. And I started hearing myself. I called my girlfriends because we were supposed to come to Bali on a girls' trip. And I called them and I could hear myself saying, I'm not going to travel anymore. I'm going to settle down. I'm going to stay in my hometown and live near my family. And I'm going to have children. And I was like, who is this? Who is this person? And that night I did a journey, which we both journey, but I did a journey with my spiritual mentor. And the journey took me to the goddess Kali. And Kali looked at me. When I do journey work, I allow my soul to show me memories that are in alignment with what's coming up in my life. And basically Kali came in and she brought me to the Akashic records and she showed me all these books and it said easy way, hard way. And Kali's kind of fierce as a goddess. I don't know if you know what she looks like. She's fierce. And she said, you're not listening. You're not listening and you're going the hard way. Mm-hmm. You're always going the hard way. She started pulling out books. She pulled out a book and she showed me my rape. She pulled out a book and she showed me my abortion. She pulled out a book and she showed me all of the times that I chose suffering over the light. And she's literally pointing at my hometown and saying, suffer, suffer, suffer. And then Bali, light, light, light.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And my girlfriends had literally booked only rooms for 2 people because I had bailed on them, which they should have. And they were pretty pissed at me. And I called and I said, I booked my flight. I'm coming. 2 days before. Walked on that flight, ear infection completely resolved and I could hear. And then got here and it completely changed my life. And I moved to Bali within a month and a half.
But you had the knowing that if you went, it would change your life.
I did. I knew. I think my soul knew that there were so many opportunities I've had to get to Bali over the years, and I haven't done it. And I think there was resistance in my physical body about getting on that flight because I got to be honest with you, I don't know if I'll ever go back home. And that to me is a death. It's a part of my ego and, it's a death of self. It's this attachment I thought I was going to have. I'm 36 now. I thought I was going to have a husband and a picket fence and children and raise them with my sister and her kids and hang out with my parents all the time, go to church, sing Kumbaya. And I've just been called by God to do something completely different. So now here I am in Bali. I'm now an energy facilitator that goes to church on Sundays and attends conscious circles and Bible studies. And before that, I was a people-pleasing party girl that was chasing cocaine and parties and rock and roll and sex. And so it's been a massive transformation for me.
If you could go back and talk to that version of you from 2-3 years ago.
I can. I can and I do. And I love that version of me. I think at first when I started this spiritual journey, I thought I had to become enlightened. You start judging that version as well, right? Well, now I can't drink and now I can't party and I can't see these people and all of these things that you start to judge about that old self. And it's just going from one side of the pole to the other. So it's like I went from being this crazy person to now being like, I wanted to be like an angel of some sort, if that makes sense. And I didn't want to make any mistakes and I wanted to be all love and light. And that's just not right either. It's a balance of the yin and the yang. But I think I had to grieve that old part of self that I still have some anger towards because could I have lived this life a little bit earlier? Does that even matter? But why did I choose so much pain in my lifetime? I know it can't be any other way from a conscious standpoint, but that little inner version of me is like, why? Still running that story. So
The peace that I've come in my life is you're ready when you're ready. So it could not have been any other way. When I look at some past regrets, the way I've been able to dissolve the regret was by realizing, yes, current me thinks I could have done something else. But in the state I was in with the knowledge and the awareness that I had back then, that was the best decision I could have made.
And I really believe that human beings are doing the best they can in every moment, regardless of what they're doing. Whether I'm talking serial killers, these are all programs that are running that people have no idea that are running their lives. And until we become conscious and we awaken and we open our eyes and look in the mirror and say, I have the capability of changing my life, then we're just victims of stories that have been projected from generation to generation to generation. And look at this generation of people that we're around that are all choosing to rewrite their stories.
It's really powerful.
It's so powerful.
It's a very powerful
and
time.
in very different ways, because your journey to consciousness has been through psychedelics. And I'd love for you to tell my viewers about them. Psychedelics was what blasted open my pineal gland many, many years ago and caused my spiritual awakening. But I've been quite afraid of them since because I couldn't integrate the two worlds. So I'd love for you to talk to me about shrooms, your experience with them, to explain to people another way of connecting into the non-duality and the oneness and seeing who we really are before we became this 3D thing.
The way I think of shrooms is like some of the friendliest teachers you could have, the best coach in the world that knows every single part of your brain and can give you precise advice on your life. Truth tellers is another word that comes to mind. So my experience with shrooms started with, the first experience was with acid, actually, and that opened up the door, the gateway to understanding there's more to reality than meets the eye.
And then people will say, oh, but you're hallucinating. Oh, it's a drug. What is your response to that when people say that?
My experience with psychedelics is that I'm seeing more of the frequencies that are already there. So sometimes when you watch cartoons about psychedelics, you see like dragons and like sort of Alice in Wonderland type of vibes.
Mm-hmm.
So you get this impression before you do psychedelics, oh, it must be actually hallucinating some sort of dragon appearing in your room. But my experience has been always, you see more of the reality that's already there. So if you're looking at a tree, you're seeing the vibration and the frequency of the leaves moving with the wind and how all of that is unified. And then on top of that, sometimes you see sacred geometry, but it's overlaid in such a way that it's not random. It's not like someone just painted random geometry over the space. You're seeing a deeper layer of reality, is how I see it.
Beautiful. I love that explanation. If we're seeing a deeper layer of what's already there, why do you think it's been outlawed and why has it been so shunned and shamed to do psychedelics in society? I know it's coming back online now, but for many, many years, this has been, don't touch these things, right? Why do you think that is?
I think because they plug you into your own authority. So with psychedelics, you get such clear access to your intuition and what you're meant to be doing that you really start trusting yourself above everyone else. And that might not be great for a society that wants to keep people in certain ways of thinking or certain ways of conditioning.
Because it's easier to control them in that way. From little kids, we are programmed. You talked about this last night when we had dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Sit down in a chair and raise your hand to go to the bathroom. Like, how weird is that?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to hold your bladder instead of going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Or sitting in a chair for 8 hours and only move when you're told that you can, which is literally conditioning children for a 9-to-5 life. A 9-to-5 life where our power is stripped away and we just work for what? For the golden handcuffs?
Yeah. For a made-up system.
For a made-up system when we could literally create our own. And that's the liberation, I believe, is by doing this work to see what programs have come in that are keeping you trapped and looping in a system that doesn't work because you have the power to change that in any moment.
I think also psychedelics tune you into love so deeply. And so let's say every citizen on Earth had access to psychedelics and was connecting to their higher self and their heart. It would be very hard to convince them to go to war and harm another human. because from that state of oneness, you realize how everything is one. There's this unity between everyone. You understand karma on such an implicit level. Like, you don't have to be convinced that it's true. You understand it.
You
Anything
feel
I do
it.
to another
Feels true. It's just true. From a karmic standpoint, you can see the effects of karma in the shroom trip.
You can see the ripples of everything you do and everything you've ever done, which makes it so obvious from this moment forward, I must do the right thing every time. Every time you're faced with a decision, you have to go with the integrity that you know is the right thing for you.
Okay. And what does that mean for you?
So usually the decision has to be aligned with truth, with love, with harmony. And also recently I got this other piece of alignment creates alignment. So when you do things that are in alignment with yourself, filling your cup, it actually creates alignment for someone else as well. So it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily, let me think about how to phrase this. When you can trust your own heart, when you can trust the message you're given and act on that, it'll create alignment for everyone else. But when you try to predict what other people want and you try to subjugate yourself to their needs, that's sort of an artificial way of controlling it.
It's very interesting. And in alignment with your truth, to me, I simplify that with my clients when I work with them. And I talk about, if you closed your eyes and you could live the life of your dreams, and I could wave a magic wand and it could happen tomorrow, and you had no money, like no fears of money, no judgment from anybody, and you got to wake up tomorrow and do what you loved in a place you loved with the people you loved, what would that life look like? And so many people will look at me and they'll say, oh gosh, I don't even know, because I have to go to work, because I have to make money, because I could never leave my family. In all of these, you see the conditions come online right away. They can't even visualize and imagine the life of their dreams because they're so caught up in the illusion of what their life has to look like. And if we are living in someone else's value systems instead of our own value systems, we're not in alignment with truth, with ourselves, and with God. So it's been really interesting to me as I start to work with trauma with my clients through energy work and through coaching. Once we start to look at the blockages that are keeping us looped in that I have to do, I should do, I need to do, that's when people can start to open it up and see that there is another reality, that they do have a choice. They can be happy. They can bring bliss in. They've just been stuck in those lower frequency vibrations for so long. And this is where I'm so interested about shrooms, because you say that when you take shrooms, you can go to that blockage really quick and kind of change that program. For me, it takes time to work through a program with a client. So if someone was to come to you and say, I have no desire to live, and I hate my job, and I hate where I live, and nobody gets me, and blah, 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 blah. And then I said to them, what does your dream life look like? And they don't know. Could shrooms help with that?
Absolutely. First, they would give them a sense of what life is all about. So on shrooms, you get to see the beauty. You get to see the love in life. You get to tune into gratitude. It instantly raises your frequency. Now, you don't get to stay there forever without doing the work afterwards, but at least for 6 hours, that person will likely be raised to a higher frequency. However, the opposite can also happen, is if they're feeling really down, the shrooms may take them deeper into that grief and that sadness, because that's the only way through.
Is feeling.
It's through, yes. So if they've been avoiding feeling something and they say they're depressed, but actually they're depressed because they're not feeling the deeper layers, the shrooms will maybe turn up the volume on those feelings. And so it may feel like a bad trip to start with. But if they can surrender to that experience, there's always a gift at it on the end of the trip.
Which is beautiful, the surrender experiment, right? Surrendering in and trusting that God has a plan bigger than our ego. If we could just get out of the way and allow God to lead us.
Yeah.
I feel as if the more I surrender into what God tells me to do, the more blissful and pleasant and peaceful my life is. When I resist the synchronicities and the messages and I think I know better. Oh no, but I have to do this. when I'm clearly being guided in another direction, that's when life kind of starts to fall apart for me. But I'm conscious enough to kind of check it now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of people are searching for this connection to God
Themselves as well.
and themselves, right? But they're looking at it through, rather than feeling what they need to feel, they're running around trying to make everyone else happy. I think that's the majority of the world. Dopamine hit after dopamine hit. So quick like on Instagram and quick line of cocaine and a shot and promiscuous sex. And it gives you that quick high to avoid feeling what's going on in the body.
Yeah.
And we're doing anything we can to be connected to other souls on this planet because we feel so alone and disconnected from ourselves.
I think Instagram is the ultimate tool of disconnection.
100%. 100%.
It's the exact opposite of connection. Because if you really cared about a friend, you'd call them up and have a chat with them. But you look at their stories and you get a false sense of being in tune with their life.
Yeah.
It's the complete opposite. I've gotten off Instagram. It's been more than a month now. Completely off Instagram. It's created the most amazing difference in my life.
For me, I find that I believe my purpose is to share my vulnerable truth with healing trauma and everything that I try. And I post the good, the bad, the ugly. I think sometimes it's, I think that if people could actually share their vulnerable truth on Instagram,
right,
Instagram could become magical. But everyone is so afraid of being seen in this world and being vulnerable and allowing their emotions to be visible, that they put the perfect picture with the perfect filter at the perfect time to get the most likes, rather than just posting on there like, hey, I'm having a hard time. I could use some love. Do you know how many people would comment on a photo that's, if somebody posted and said, I'm struggling with life, I'm struggling to live, and they allowed themselves to be seen? I bet you we could turn Instagram into a beautiful tool, but people have to be willing to do the work, because for me, the last guy I dated, he was like, your Instagram is so messy. Did I do this?
You didn't curate it enough.
And I'm like, yeah, because I'm sharing, like, I believe our power is in our vulnerability. It's not in being this god or goddess to put yourself on a pedestal, to rise yourself above anybody. We are all human beings. We are all suffering. We are all experiencing joy, and we are all being led back home to God, to oneness together. So can we try to make this a little easier by just holding space for one another to feel?
But don't you also find that can really come only from the in-person interactions? Getting it online, there's always this layer of artificiality on top of it.
I disagree, but it depends on the intention, right? So yes, I would, you want to help 1 billion people, right? 1 billion people?
I want to educate 1 billion people to take shrooms on the same day.
Okay. Can you do that in person?
No.
So
that's where the online can come in.
Right. And online, we have to be able to learn how to share our truth online rather than this facade. Because if I saw you in person, I would be able to know within 2 seconds that you were full of shit. If you were having a bad day and I said, hey, James, how you doing? And you were like, I'm good. I can read you energetically, right? I can tap in and I would know right away, do you want to talk? Right? And then we can have that beautiful connection. But if everybody is online and they're just posting all of this fake BS, trying to pretend they're the perfect family and this and that, rather than sharing their vulnerability, how do we help?
It starts with the truth.
Starts with truth. And that's what our search is for, right? You and I, for the truth.
Yes.
In regards to the mushroom journeys that you do, if you were to coach someone through their first mushroom experience, how would you explain, I know you say they're teachers, and how would you explain the process and the best way to stay safe, and just how would you educate a client on exploring the realms of consciousness through shrooms?
I would say there's 4 key touchstones that have really helped me. The first is intention. Always go into a trip with intention, knowing why you're doing it, what you want to learn. It can be a very general intention as well, as in, I want to learn about my life. I want to learn more about myself. Or it could be very specific, like, I know I have a father wound, let's go deeper into that. So both intentions can work, but never do a trip unintentionally, because that's not showing respect to the plant medicine. And it's like coming to a podcast unintentionally. You know what I mean? The second aspect is the surrender piece. Once you're in a trip, all sorts of things will float up to the surface from your subconscious. Things that you want to see, things that you might not want to see. Your job in the trip is not to control the experience, but to flow with it, dance with it, collaborate with the shrooms. If you feel stuck, ask for guidance, because you can really dialogue with the shrooms. You can say, go gentle on me, or show me what I'm missing here. I'm not getting it. I still feel stuck. And what happens is they keep working on the energy. It's like untangling the knots of your psyche until, in my experience, there's always a moment of catharsis where you get it. This thing leads to this thing and came from this thing.
Like a thread.
Like a thread that you're unpulling, and the whole house of cards that your ego has built to protect you starts falling away. And you see more of the truth, more of the love, more of your divine nature. So there's the intention piece, the surrender piece, the trust piece, which actually I should have mentioned first. In order to surrender, you have to trust the mushrooms. So this is not something that maybe can be taught. It has to be learned over time. So for someone doing their first shroom trip, start small. Start with a low dose so you can establish a relationship with the shrooms. And then as you get more braver and courageous, you can go deeper because now you have that trust. And the final piece, I would say, is curiosity. That can really get you out of a tight situation, is when you're faced with the demons or faced with something dark, get curious about it. Don't resist it. Don't try to look away from it, but get curious about it. I feel a lot of grief and stuck energy here. Why? Let me look deeper into that. And the attitude of curiosity will take someone so far.
It's very interesting because the way that I work with clients, we talk about triggers. What is a trigger? Well, a trigger is a feeling that comes up in your body in a situation where you don't feel safe. So what can happen? Maybe you feel it's like fight or flight coming on. Your amygdala starts firing. You're not safe. And your body, you start to lose control and you get out of the mental layer and you go into the emotional layer. And then you can't make logical decisions from there because you're emotional. And then you have to make a decision. Is this life or death in this moment? So once you kind of get into that emotional layer, I always say to my clients, first of all, you find safety when you're triggered. If you're triggered, if you need to move, if you need to flee, you got to give your body what it needs to feel safe. Because if it doesn't feel safe, everything shuts down. So you're saying that same thing. That's like, trust and like making sure you're safe when you're safety.
So if someone's going to control anything in the trip, they should control their environment to 100%. You make sure you trip at home, somewhere you feel safe, comfortable, no disturbances, no energies in the space that you don't feel comfortable around. So either tripping solo or hopefully with a trip sitter, especially for a first timer. Once the space is controlled, you allow yourself to be uncontrolled in the inner space.
Beautiful.
Knowing that you're held and you're safe.
And that's exactly how I would coach a client through in the 3D world. The regular world is, I had a fight with my partner. Okay, so what did you do? Well, we had this big fight. I'm like, well, the first thing you should have when did it start? Let's get back to the starting point, right? You felt flutters in your chest. You were already a little bit upset. Could you have removed yourself from the situation? Could you have found safety? Did you perpetuate the trauma by staying longer than you should have, right? Once you find safety, because this is what happens with people. They feel a thing in their body and they don't want to feel it. So they project it out with anger or with you did this rather than saying, okay, I'm feeling something. I'm conscious enough to feel it. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to sit with it and have curiosity about what this is showing me because it's always showing you something, just like with the shrooms, right? In a bad trip, even if it appears bad in the moment, can you be curious about what is bad and look deeper? Because there's most likely something from the past that you're holding on to in the present moment that's affecting the future. And here's an opportunity to let it go. To let it go. Because these programs in our subconscious mind running 95% of our lives, we aren't even aware of most of them. So to have an opportunity with a trigger or with a shroom trip, it's very similar, I think, how we work with people on rather than suppressing that trigger or suppressing this bad feeling in a trip, be curious about it. Go deeper.
Go deeper, go through it, feel it, process it,
because it's always a gift. There's always something to be grateful for on the other side. That's the part I find the most bizarre, is that the things that I suppressed the most and I avoided feeling for so long, once I felt the thing that it was and I saw it for what it was a gift because it was leading me to something bigger.
Yeah.
And that's what God does.
There's been trips where I've felt the stuckness and the energy is stuck. And I'm thinking, there's no way that in the next 6 hours I'm going to be able to solve this puzzle. It feels so gargantuan and stuck and blocked. And every time the shrooms do their magic.
Or do you do your magic with the shrooms?
With the shrooms, yes. The collaboration happens, the dance happens. By the end of the trip, there's always the moment of unlocking the next level. I'm like, wow. And so what I've learned is the first hour or two of the trip is where you face the problem, whatever challenge is in your life. Why did you invite this challenge into your life? Why did this happen?
Where did the program start?
Where did the program start? Once you have a full acceptance of that, then the shrooms begin to show you solutions, homework, ideas, insights on how you can up-level out of this situation. Or not out of it, but solve it, resolve it, dissolve it. And then the last few hours is more like the integration. It's like you're just in a very dialed in state and you're primed to take notes, start thinking about action steps you can take the next day, ways to integrate the experience.
Amazing. It's really interesting. So as a Kundalini facilitator and an energy worker, what I do in this space is I create an energetic vortex for the client to come in and just feel, really. So they face the fear by coming in. So the environment is safe because I'm setting it. So call me a trip sitter.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
A trip sitter. And I create an energetic vortex in the room.
A trip sitter and a trip setter.
A trip setter, exactly.
You set up the amazing environment, the container, the energetic space.
And then the clients know, they come in and they say, okay, I'm ready to see what's here.
And you know what we're talking about, the coherence with the masterminds. You're creating coherence for your client. Because the moment they enter your space, their energy now has to match
mine,
the dominant energy of yourself and your space and how you've set it up.
Exactly.
And it starts tuning them even before the work begins. It already has started.
So that's exactly what I say. I say, when people say, what are you doing? I say, I'm a giant tuning fork. And all I'm doing is I'm creating a frequency
I love that.
For your body to come in. And your soul knows that we want to rise in frequency. And I'm continuing to rise every day. It's not like I'm at this place and I'm done. I'm always looking to rise and get higher and higher, because the higher the frequency, the more love and compassion and acceptance and empathy and forgiveness I have in my soul. So I'm always looking to continue to rise my vibration. But for a client that comes in, there's this safe space that's set for them to feel what needs to be felt. And it's really up to them. And I feel like with the trip, it's probably very similar, where it's the path of surrender. You can fight it. You can fight it. You can hold on. And I watch clients, their hands turn into lobster claws. They don't want to let go of the sound and they can get all tense. And it's, the people that have the most profound experiences let go. And the beginning part of the session is usually crying, screaming, anger, sobs, begging, a lot of pain, right? Because you're going back to these old memories and these old traumas that have been keeping you stuck. Like you talk about this stuck feeling of, I'm not worthy, or nobody's going to love me, or I'm going to end up alone, or money, I can't make money, all of these thoughts. And you have to go back to those memories to feel them, to let them go. It's through feeling that we let them go. It's not through suppressing them. And then the second part of my session, I always say, call in the love, call in the light. And that's when the clients will start to have downloads from ancestors, and their spirit guides will come and talk to them. They may see their purpose. They may see what their dream future is going to look like. They get these beautiful solutions, like you say. And then the key is integration for mine. And I believe that that is the one place where we need to do a better job as space holders of helping with, because I think the trip is amazing and the energy session is amazing, but without integration, you have nothing. That's my opinion. I think that there's a lot of people in Bali that are facilitating energy healings, but they're not helping clients with their integration. So how do you integrate after a trip like that? Because sometimes for my clients, sometimes they throw up after, they get sick, they have bad dreams, they have more pain coming up, and they get nervous. And I say, no, you have to understand, as your frequency is rising, any of those lower vibrational things you've been holding on to need to purge out of the way. And that may look like an exorcism at times, or it may look scary, but it's a detoxification of your soul.
Yeah.
In a way. So how do you help people integrate?
I always say find at least one idea or one action step that you can immediately integrate into your life. Because sometimes we have so many downloads and insights on a trip, and we try to take action on all of them, and we end up doing nothing. So if you can take one thing from your trip, one core theme, and start living your life, embodying that theme in your life, that's going to create the most impact. Because I used to get frustrated. I would get so much access to my higher self in the mushroom trip. And inevitably, you come back to your 3D self. And you're like, here's all my weaknesses again, all my patterns, addictions. And you're like, okay, but I was so close. And it's like the mushrooms give you a North Star to shoot for. They show you the highest self that you can be. But you're going to come back to your 3D self. So try to bring back one piece with you and work on that. And then when you're ready, you do the next trip, but only after you feel like you've solidified that piece.
Do you do any other type of work with your consciousness outside of mushrooms?
Yes, through breath work.
Okay.
Very potent. Meditation, journaling, of course. Things that are like maybe more 3D like. People upgrade me. Being around energies of other people, the masterminds. That's a whole trip in and of itself.
But that's a collaboration that's come from seeing that there's something bigger that we can cultivate and create, and that life doesn't have to be this war, right? Like, when you look at, there's a choice you make every single day. Are you going to live your best life, or are you going to live a victim life? And in the laws of duality, you can't be surviving and thriving at the same time. It's a choice. Yeah. And we have to make a choice every single day. Do we want to thrive, or do we want to survive? And you see a lot of victim mentality going on in this world, and a lot of war going on in this world and on this globe, that you can see exactly what's going on the inside of most people is a war of light and dark. And it really makes me sad to see how many people wake up, they turn the news on, they are living in fear every single day, doing a job they hate, in a relationship that they don't like, eating terrible food, taking terrible care of their bodies, complaining. I can't lose weight, or I'm fat, or this and that. And it's just, they don't even see that they're creating this life that they have complete control of changing if they want to. So how do you make them see it?
Yeah, so it's a tough thing because you do have complete control, and also once you're in the loop of your own thoughts, it's very tough to break out of that. So what I like to think of the mushrooms is a pattern interrupt, and breathwork can do that too, and Kundalini awakenings can do that too. It's you're interrupting someone's default mode network, default way of thinking in a limited way. And for 6 hours, you blast them with unlimited thinking. Now, when they return back to their old state, they're not really the same person. And they still remember that unlimited self. And
a little bit more each time.
A little bit
That's
more
how
each
I
time.
feel. So I would, with Bufo and my psychedelic experiences, every time that I have left my body, whether it's been with breath work, and all of the different ways that you can, and I say leave the body. When I say leave the body, I mean assess the oneness, because consciousness shows us that there is a God that is bigger than all of us and that connects all of us. All plants, animals, living things, our souls are all connected. Yet here we are having infinite experiences of love, mirroring each other in this reality, in this illusion. And all of us are so caught up in the I, me, trying to control the experience that we're not able to see the beauty of what is really unfolding for us every single day, which is a gift. Every moment is a gift and an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the light and to bring more light into this world if you choose to see it that way.
Let me ask you this then. In the challenging moments, how have you found to see the light? Because in that really deep, challenging moment of resistance or blocks, and someone says, hey, just be grateful. It's can be very tough in that moment.
I think that takes so much practice, right? I
Yeah.
think I had my core memory of pain come back this week. So for the last 8 years, I've been looking at what my programs are, and I've been on this consciousness journey, and I have felt these deep, dominant thoughts of, I get love from abuse, and my body is disgusting, and I am unworthy of love. And every time that I feel a trigger that comes up in my life, I face it and I go back to a memory where I proved that thought true, right? And it's all inner child work of going back. And over the years, I used to have triggers all of the time. I mean, I was triggered, I was angry, I was projecting because I was living in that darkness most of the life, and I was seeing the light every so frequently. So it was trigger, trigger, trigger.
Yeah.
I think the more that you do this work and the more that you commit to working with your triggers and changing them into love, the less frequently they happen, but the heavier they are, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like when you look at a yin-yang symbol. You know, like I feel like I was the dark side with the little white in the beginning, and now I'm kind of over at the white side with the black. It's like, it's a big thing every time. So this week, I had a trigger come up with a guy that I was dating where the way that he looked at me and the way that I felt about him, it triggered me so bad I wanted to die at an event that I was completely safe at. I was at Canggu Fight Night, and all of a sudden, everything closed down around me, and I would have rather died in that moment than been there, but I'm conscious enough to know that I was safe. So the first thing I had to do, which I teach all my clients, is I recognize that I am triggered. I need to find safety. So I left early and I went home. And I said, okay, now just give yourself what you need in this moment of darkness.
Mm-hmm.
So I curled up in a little ball and I cried like a baby, and I cuddled my dogs and I ate ice cream, and I just gave my body what it needed in that moment without judging it. It just needed to be held. And I said, okay, this is something deeper. So then once I let the sadness come through and the embarrassment of how I had felt, I started to be curious about, what is this? You know,
Mm-hmm.
what is this showing me? What is this teaching me? Because first of all, I wasn't not safe. I was completely safe, yet my body felt crippled. So I know that there's trauma there.
Yeah.
And when I looked in at the memory and I went deeper into my space that I can get to, I journey through breath work and meditation. I got to my core memory where I was sexually molested by a family member at 4 years old on multiple occasions. And I have suppressed these memories for years and years and years. And I have known about all the other things that I've chosen, the promiscuous sex and the multiple partners and the rape and all of the things. But I never understood why until I got to the root. And the root was this little girl that knew nothing but love because she came from heaven and she came down and she was programmed by someone else's pain and shame and sexual abuse to believe that that's how she got love. And I have been searching for love through sexual connection my entire life and felt so guilty and shamed for how gross that memory was. And what did I have to do in that moment? I just had to feel it. I had to feel the anger. I had to feel the shame. I had to feel the guilt, the resentment, the betrayal. I mean, there's layers upon layers, and I'm still going to be unpacking this for a long time.
Yeah.
Because it was easier to pretend that it wasn't there and I wasn't abused, because that means that that person didn't love me, than it was for me to see that this was never my fault.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been blaming myself for so long and saying, I am unlovable, I am broken. And just proving that true, because it was easier to do that than it was to see that the person that I loved and trusted the most molested me as a little girl. So I know this is really heavy and really deep, and I just think the beauty in explaining it is I would have looked back on my childhood and said I had the perfect childhood because I didn't have access to those memories. And it took years of work to get to the point where I was able to face that memory and not want to die, because I don't think I could have handled it at any other time in any other place. And that guy that looked at me in that way, although not aligned for me for the long term, what a perfect gift from the universe. That painful memory came back to give me this root cause, because now I can finally heal it.
Mm-hmm.
because I'm aware of what's been in the shadow. I've been hiding from it my whole life, and now here it is, and it's just about healing it. So you say, what do I do in the darkest moments? Well, this week, I have gotten back to the basics. I wake up and I meditate and I do my breath work no matter what. I'm not too busy for anything other than that. I write down what I'm grateful for, even if it's just that I have 2 arms and 2 legs. I write down what I'm grateful for. I do my evening meditation. I've decided to do a detox for my physical body to take it through deep healing because I know that my body needs to let go of this pain as well. It's not just my emotional layer and my mental layer. It's my physical body that's been holding on to this for so long. So now I'm giving that what it needs. So I guess the short answer to that question is you meet yourself where you are every day without judgment and just give yourself what you need and share with people that can hear and understand it and that are conscious enough to not feel as if they need to fix it, but that can hold space for you to process your feelings. Because I feel so safe talking about that with you. And yes, I'll share this with the internet in hopes that it helps one person recognize that they're not alone and that these programs run really, really deep and they're really painful. But once you get to the other side, sharing it and being vulnerable and helping others takes the pain and kind of makes it into a pleasure because there's a purpose for it. I know that story is pretty deep and painful to hear. I guess I'm kind of at a point now where I don't really know how to integrate that pain. I know that it will take time, but I would love to know if mushrooms could speed up the process a little bit and help me with integrating now that I know my core wound. Would you recommend that for me?
Yes, if you're willing to go to the depths that the mushrooms will take you. And I think that's an intuition call. So if someone was in your situation and they deeply felt resistance to the mushrooms, no way I would advise that. But in your situation, from talking to you before, it feels like you have a calling to the mushrooms to explore this part of you, to see deeper into the layers of what happened there and how to resolve it. And in that sense, I would trust that gut feeling because it means there's a gift for you in there. So yes, I think mushrooms could help for sure. Because like I said earlier in the podcast, they're truth tellers. So whatever you are not looking at or whatever blind spots you have, the mushrooms are so good at pinpointing, this is the wound, this is the part you need to work on. Or in your case, this is how to heal from this. Maybe you already know the truth, but you don't know the next steps of how to heal from something like this. That's where the mushrooms can bring their loving energy to it, their motherly energy to it.
And for me, I've just had a couple of crazy trip experiences, right? Like my 8 hits of acid experience that kind of made me feel afraid of leaving my body. I can set an intention and kind of control the trip, even though I'm meant to surrender. It's possible.
You can control the environment. You can control your intention. And I do find that you do have some leeway in the trip. If it's not a super high dose, you can dialogue with the shrooms. You can dialogue with your subconscious. You can take the trip in a different direction. But the surrender is such a crucial aspect of it that if you in the trip are not feeling safe to surrender, the mushrooms can't fully do the work, as you've probably noticed with your clients. Like if a client is just super resistant and they're in their head and they're self-conscious and they cannot let go, there's only so much tuning you can do. They have to consent to it. And this is where the intention is so powerful, because if from the beginning of the trip, even before you ingest the psilocybin, you say, I'm here to work on this. I'm ready to face whatever I'm being shown here. And my purpose here is to heal. Mushrooms, whatever wounds, whatever blocks are in the way of my healing, show me the way. Let it be so.
Beautiful.
That intention, it's like a lighthouse. It will guide your trip. So even with the stormy waves and the sea storms and the ship going this way, that way, you have your lighthouse. I'm here for the healing. Do whatever it takes. And then the mushrooms can really get to work because now they have your full consent, full trust, full surrender.
And as we're all connected, it just will start to untangle those threads and show me where the threads are connected to. I've done so much work in my energetic body. So I'm
You're
really
so
thinking
prepared.
that, yeah, I think this will be, it's time. I think it's time to
You've done a lot of work. So you going into this trip, you're so much more prepared than, let's say, the average person who maybe has had a traumatic experience, has not done any work on themselves, and now they're turning to psychedelics as a magic pill to solve it.
right. And there's no
That could be
magic
rough.
pill. There's
That
no
could-
magic pill.
You
Like,
got to do the work.
it's a lifestyle. I always say that about trauma healing as well. You know, what I teach and what I coach my clients is a lifestyle. It's not a one and done. This isn't another dopamine hit. This is a lifestyle. This is a commitment to living consciously, facing what comes up, looking at the shadow, turning it to light, repeat.
Yes.
Living, ride the wave, trigger, look at it, heal it, move forward. And we kind of move up like
In the
this.
cycles.
Right.
I love that.
So it's not a never ending thing. So
That's how each trip is for me as well. You take a piece, you learn, you integrate, you live your normal life with that new piece of information.
and you come back.
Then you come back, and I call it calibration. Each time you're coming back to calibrate your soul, retune yourself. We get out of calibration through drama, life experiences, people, negative energies. And having a monthly or a bi-monthly trip for me has been so important to just keep that calibration, keep that tuning in with God.
The most important thing about this trip is that I set an intention and that I have a safe space and a trip sitter. Is there anything else that you recommend that I do before this trip?
No drama beforehand. So like if you know certain people trigger you, you might want to stay away from them a couple days before the trip.
Okay.
So you're really setting up the energetic forces to be as neutral as possible so you can go deep into the one focus you want to go into, which is your healing.
Yeah, I think at this point I have done the work and I have shown up and I've made such a commitment to healing this. And that's what a commitment I have to my clients is that I will continue to do my work as it shows up. And this is a really great opportunity for me to level up, I think.
I think so too. I think your intuition being guided to the mushrooms at this point in your life, having done all the work you've done with your own modalities up to this point, led your own clients on your own type of trips. So everything's been preparing you for this moment to reintroduce psilocybin in your life because it's not your first time doing it, but maybe it'll be the first time doing it with such intention and such care and such
respect for the plant.
for it.
That's how I feel.
And I think this time it's going to be very different for you because of those elements. So the beautiful thing is you found that core memory on your own without psychedelics. I think that's a really important thing to highlight for listeners is you can get there without any psychedelics. We're not saying that, everyone should have LSD dosed in their water supply. But if you want the acceleration, if you're ready for more growth, you're ready to dive deeper, my God, a dose of psilocybin or even something like ayahuasca or DMT is going to take you so deep, so fast.
So deep, so fast. And that's the thing, but that's where integration is key and giving your body what it needs. So what are your recommendations for me the day of the trip and then the night after the trip and then the morning after? So I would say just give me some tips.
The day of, you want to eat maybe a light breakfast. I like to do the trips around evening. So if you're going to do it in the evening, have a light breakfast, try to fast a few hours beforehand, keep your system very light. I would say no social media that day, nothing that allows other energies into your space because everything you consume is going to be imprinted in your subconscious for the next 24 hours at least. So you're going to bring that into your trip. I would say actually the last 72 hours, you kind of bring that more profoundly into your trip. Whatever's been floating around in your mind in the last 72 hours.
Okay.
Like if you were to do a trip today, everything that's been in your mind the last 72 hours would come up and float up. And that's really good to know because then if you meditate on your intention for 3 days coming up to the trip, it's already primed. Your brain knows exactly where to go.
Right.
The mushrooms know exactly which neuron connections to make that breakthrough for you.
And that's the divine connection in all of this that we're like this trip is already happening. It's been coming
you're
for
already
a long
preparing
time.
it for it now.
It's been being created. And this is where, as a conscious human being, I know my thoughts are creating my reality every moment. And I'm starting to become more and more conscious of those thoughts. So prepping for 72 hours before a trip is incredibly essential. not just going and taking mushrooms and then wondering what the trip is going to be. I can really set the stage
You can really set
as
the
well
stage.
as I want.
And then during the trip, it's the surrender piece, not resisting, and also having no expectations.
And what does a trip sitter do during that to help? Like, let's say, for example, I got locked in a memory and I was looping. Can a trip sitter help you out of that loop, or how does that work? Is
I
it
think
really
so.
you with you?
No, I think in that moment, the right question from a trip sitter or the right statement can snap someone out of that loop, or even something like changing the music. Because when you're in a loop, you can't even reach your phone, let alone navigate the UI. But if someone else is in control of the environment and they can say, hey, she's getting stuck, let me change the music.
And how will you know that someone's stuck?
Communication, you can tell if someone's having a good time or not. Also just asking them, like, how are you feeling? What's happening for you in this moment?
So it's beautiful. It's holding space again, which is
Holding
exactly
space.
what we just need to do for one another in every moment of every day. Just hold space.
Mm-hmm.
Be present.
If someone's present, they're attuned to your energy and they can see if you're heading off in a negative direction, just like you can see it with your clients. For example, in my trips, I remember doing Bufo, and your eyes are closed. At one point, I just flipped my hand, and the facilitator knew that was the moment where I needed
Someone
the touch.
to be touched.
And it was so important. It was so crucial in that moment. And he felt that, and because he was attuned. He was trip sitting. He wasn't like on his phone, checking Instagram.
He was present.
He was very present. He knew exactly what needed to happen there. So that's what the best facilitators can do, is be out of the way. Because for most of the trip in that Bufo journey, he said he was just meditating because he knew I was fine.
Mm.
And it was in just that one moment where I needed that extra little bit of attention, and he was able to be there. So I think 90% of it is actually getting out of the way, letting the mushrooms do the work, but being absolutely present and attuned for those moments where it's needed.
Beautiful. I love that. It's really funny because when I channel with my clients, I try to stay out of the way as much as possible until I start seeing their body kriya or having some sort of a reaction. And I'm watching the energy not flow the way that it should, right? And I can see that they get stuck. And that's when I'll come and I'll open my channel up and sing or chant or whatever comes through to help them move through. But you're right, it can be just a change in music or a touch or something. But those intuitive guides and moments come in when we're all in alignment with trying to help each other heal. Like, this isn't taking mushrooms because I want to go party and have a good time. This is setting an intention to heal. This is deep work. And this is where I think some people try to escape reality by taking psychedelics rather than taking them with the intention of healing. And healing can be hard. I want our viewers to understand that it's not all love and light. There is darkness. We can't understand the light without the dark. So for me, who's been avoiding psychedelics for a long time, I've still been on my journey. It's just been a little bit more gentle, but I'm now at the point where I'm not afraid. I've faced the darkest memory. I don't think that there's going to be any darker memory than what came to terms for me than a caretaker doing that.
Such an important piece that you just brought up. You're willing to look at the darkness. So actually you have nothing to fear in the mushroom trip. The people that fear a psychedelic trip is because A, they don't know themselves well enough, so they don't know what they're going to find in their mind. And that scares the shit out of them because part of them knows what's in their mind, but they just don't want to look at it. You seem to be at the exact opposite place. You already know the things that are in your mind. You're more than willing to look deeper into them. In fact, you want to for the healing to happen. And you're fearless.
Yep.
You know that whatever is shown to you is only for your divine evolution. So nothing can hurt you in that trip beyond the pain you've already experienced. So it's kind of the perfect merging of all the forces and intentions. Being willing to look at your own darkness, you can go into a trip fearlessly. When I do ayahuasca now, when I do DMT, I'm very humble, meaning I'm not trying to be arrogant about it. But there's a part of me that knows I'm ready for this. Bring it on, but not in an arrogant way because you want to stay humble.
Right.
But bring it on. I'm ready for the experience. I'm ready to do the work. There's nothing that you can show me here that will phase me. And if it does phase me, good. That means that's the piece I missed.
Right, exactly. And it's that integration piece of afterwards. So this is where, for me, my clients come in and I always say to them, what you do on the mat in my session is only 5% of the work. 95% is what you take from this experience and you move on with. So I always ask things like, what aligned actions are you going to take tomorrow? What boundaries are you going to set? What are you going to take from this experience and integrate into your real life? Because that's where the work is. The work isn't in getting the answer. The work is taking that answer and integrating that love into this 3D as we all try to bring heaven onto earth, which I believe is our purpose, really, is to create heaven on earth. So what do you do to integrate after a trip?
First thing is taking as much notes as possible, especially on the night of the trip.
Okay.
Because you're like, oh, I'll remember it in the morning. But you're in the state, you're in the zone. The time is now. So I write down every single thing that I could think of.
Even voice noting I've done sometimes.
Voice
after a journey.
Totally.
Because you're just exhausted, right? And like some journeys of mine, I'm like, oh my God, that was so tiring. I'll have to.
If you can do a video diary, that's even better.
Oh,
you can really feel the energy of it.
That's a great idea too. But just making sure that you, in that moment, take as much of it as you can because you just did so much work. Yeah. It's really important. And I think we have amnesia as human beings and we go to the oneness, and we travel and we come back and we remember just a little bit more every time. So the more that you can take, the better.
Yes.
What has changed in your life since you started psychedelics?
Getting over depression.
Amazing.
Completely dissolving it. Stepping into my power and my leadership. Getting layers of insecurities completely dissolved. I remember in my first ayahuasca journey, I literally felt it was like she was slashing up the layers of insecurities of not wanting to be seen because I wasn't doing YouTube yet, but I wanted to do YouTube. And it's like ayahuasca said, you don't need these insecurities. Let's get these out of the way. Because it knew that the mission was more important than whatever egoic insecurities were there blocking me.
Amazing.
A deeper sense of love for myself, for others, a deeper sense of unity with others, seeing God in everyone. That's been a major piece. Like sometimes I'll be driving around Bali. I'm looking at all the drivers heading the other way. And all I see is God, but with just different masks. And it sounds maybe cheesy to some people listening to this, but it's just how you start perceiving reality. It's like, yes, you're this human being, Chelsea, but actually you're just a piece of God communicating with a piece of God.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
What I always say is God created nothing but love, but life has gotten in the way. And the duality and the shadow sides of self have covered up the light and we've chosen. Yes, but I think it's what a gift it is to me to just spark a little bit more light on every soul that comes in my path in some sort of a way. Can I take them a little deeper? Can I help them see themselves a little bit more? And that's what your mission is with the mushrooms. You're helping people see themselves deeper. Well, my mission is with my clients and energy work and the way I'm sharing my journey, looking at your shadow and looking at your mirror. Yes, it's scary to turn around, but once you turn around, you see yourself for the beautiful soul that you are, which is really all light. And the more that you can look at the shadows and forgive those parts of self and let them move through, the more that you can start to really see who you truly are, which is God. We are nothing but light. What about integration afterwards?
So the next day, depending on how intense the trip is, expect a bit of a low because you've come back to 3D. There's a bit of like, I'm not like fully connected to my higher self anymore. So that's normal. Expect it to be more of a relaxed day. Make sure you don't have any appointments or things scheduled for that day. You really want to take at least one day to just be with yourself. You're still in the zone. You're still tethered to that experience. So more insights could come through. Aligned action, you mentioned that earlier, and I love that word. So you figure out what is the aligned actions. Who do I need to call to maybe apologize to? Who do I need to forgive? Sometimes it could be a practical thing. Like I've gotten business ideas on mushrooms that I'm like, okay, I have to implement it now because now I'm in that zone. And if I wait a week, I'm losing that energy that's so vital to any decision. It's the energy you bring to the decision. I also noticed for 2 weeks after mushrooms, you're in a much more open, expanded state. Almost like your brain is in that learning phase where connections can happen quicker. So that's the best time to implement those new habits or new aligned actions because they can stick. Okay. You're in a very receptive state. Yeah, I think journaling, journaling about the experience, not sharing it yet is actually my advice to too many people until you've really embodied and integrated it. Because when you start sharing it, it's almost like you said, oh, I'm done with the work. I'm sharing it now, like someone who publishes a book. But when you're in the middle of writing the book, you're usually not sharing it with everyone. You're like in the process. It's a messy process. You're editing, you're deleting things, you're adding things. And so I think of the mushroom container not as just that one day experience, but extended to at least a week. This is like your week container. And so you prepare for a few days before you do the mushrooms, and at least a few days after, you're integrating, you're processing, you're understanding it. You're seeing, and also not expecting to get every piece of it integrated. Like giving yourself that human compassion of you're not going to be able to integrate every single idea that the mushrooms give you. And that's okay. So just take one at a time. Okay. And the one that feels the most inspired in the moment, act on that.
Okay.
And that'll embody it in your system.
Any other tips for me before I embark on a mushroom journey?
Just trust. Trust that they're there to guide you. They're not going to show you anything that you're not prepared for. That the experience will be a combination of your mind and the mushroom intelligence. That's also, I think, important to mention, is that you should take the messages from the mushrooms seriously, but also understand that your mind is involved in the experience. Always check in with your gut of how everything is landing to make sure that the messages that are being shown to you are a clear channel. You're not distorting it with the ego, which can sometimes come in later on.
Okay.
But a potent trip will dissolve the ego for those few hours. So you're a very clear channel to receive that.
So for me going into this, and now I've just gotten access to this core memory, I'm ready to let it go and forgive and move through it. Could I set the intention that I just want little Chelsea to just get the love that she didn't get as a child that she wanted? Could I set an intention like that?
For sure. That's a beautiful intention.
To show her the love that was always there.
I want to connect with my inner child and show her the love that she never...
Like, and set her free.
Yeah, full unity with that self. All the parts of you. Let's bring them all into unity during this trip. And let's flow love from every single timeline, every single part of me, down to the absolute core. And let that light and love heal every part of me. And let the mushrooms show me where there's any blocks still in the way, any wounds in the way. And let's send light and love towards that. Trust the mushrooms will take you where they need to take you. There's been trips where I've had intentions, and the first 10 minutes, the mushrooms are like, yeah, okay, we got that. Now let's do the real work. So it could be that as serious as this is, there could be another piece that we're not even aware of that could float up. And you're like, whoa, this is the real work? And it's such a eureka moment. It's an amazing moment when that happens in the mushrooms.
Because you're like, I thought that this was I thought
it was my inner child. And then it could be like, oh no, there's another layer deeper, perhaps.
Interesting.
So being very open, being very receptive to the new ideas from the mushrooms. And last piece is no expectations. Like, we've hyped it up here, but actually no expectations. It could be a very gentle trip. Could be a very mild trip. It could be that the first time you re-engaging with psilocybin, it doesn't want to take you super deep. Maybe it wants to just give you a very light, breezy experience. And so whatever comes, being grateful for that.
I'll have to bring you back on after I go through this experience. So maybe you can help me with integration afterwards. Would you be willing to come back on and chat about it?
It'll be an honor.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Chelsea for having me as a guest on her podcast. Go check out her podcast, Liberate Your Bliss. Details will be in the show notes. Thank you for being a listener of the James Xander Trip. I deeply appreciate you. If you want to stay in touch and stay updated through my newsletter, go to jamesxandertrip.com. And if you want to dive deeper into consciousness, manifestation, personal growth, and up-leveling in life, check out my course, unlockgodmode.org. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.